This is a paper that just came out that argues for blue foods to accomplish some of the goals in terms of nutrition needs, reducing environmental footprints from food production, and also co-benefits of meeting cultural demands and so on and so forth. Let's start by reading the abstract. Blue foods sourced in aquatic environments are important for the economies, livelihoods, nutritional security, and cultures of people in many nations. They are often nutrient-rich, generate lower emissions and impacts on land and water than many terrestrial meats, and contribute to the health, well-being, and livelihood of many rural communities. The Blue Food Assessment recently evaluated nutritional, environmental, economic, and justice dimensions of blue food globally. Here we integrate these findings and translate them into 4 policy objectives to help realize the contributions that blue foods can make to national food systems around the world. Ensuring supplies of critical nutrients, providing healthy alternatives to terrestrial meat, reducing dietary environmental footprints, and safeguarding blue food contributions to nutrition, just economies, and livelihoods under changing climate. To account for how context-specific environmental, socio-economic, and cultural aspects affect this contribution, we assess the relevance of each policy objective for individual countries and examine associated co-benefits and trade-offs at national and international scales. We find that in many African and South American nations, facilitating consumption of culturally relevant blue food, especially among nutritionally vulnerable population segments, could address vitamin B12 and omega-3 deficiencies. That's very specific. Meanwhile, in many global north nations, cardiovascular disease rates and large greenhouse gas footprints from ruminant meat intake like beef could be lowered through moderate consumption of seafood with low environmental impact. The analytic framework we provide also identifies countries with high future risk for whom climate adaptation of blue food systems will be particularly important. Overall, the framework helps decision makers to assess the blue food policy objectives most relevant to their geographies and to compare and contrast the benefits and trade-offs associated with pursuing these objectives. Just to emphasize, 4 ways blue foods improve food systems: sources of critical nutrients, healthy alternatives to terrestrial animal source foods, nutrient sources with relatively low environmental footprints, and cornerstones in cultures, diets, economies, and livelihoods. Details are given in terms of 4 policy objectives delineating the role blue foods can play in addressing social, environmental, and nutritional challenges of food systems in different contexts. I won't read all the details, but blue food policy objectives include reducing blue food sensitive nutrient deficiencies. For example, when nutrient insufficiency is high and blue foods are or can be made available together with other nutritious foods. Okay? Examples of co-benefits and trade-offs needing consideration are many: nutrition-sensitive trade, processing, and distribution policies are also important to avoid scenarios in which increased aquaculture production delivers foods that are nutrient-rich, affordable, or accessible to those who need it. Okay, so just examples. The second one, in terms of blue food policy objective, reducing disease burden associated with high consumption of red meat, for example, cardiovascular disease risk. In terms of conditions under which blue foods can contribute to achieving food policy objective, here, when red meat consumption is high, the risk of cardiovascular disease is high, and low environmental impact foods are or can be made available together with other health promoting foods. Okay. Third one, reducing environmental footprints of food consumption and production. Here conditions are when red meat or ruminant meat consumption is high and blue foods are or can be made available, can help accomplish this policy goal. This last one, safeguarding contributions to nutrition, just economies, livelihoods, and cultures under climate change now and in the future. So in places where blue foods play an important role for nutrition, economies and or employment, we have to ensure that they are climate resilient. And in terms of conditions for meeting the needs, if blue foods contribute substantially to national employment, export revenue or nutrition and are likely to be threatened by climate hazards, then we have to obviously worry about the conditions that affect the achievement of these food policy objectives. Okay. Here looking at reducing B12 deficiency, reducing cardiovascular diseases, safeguarding food system contributions, reducing omega-3 deficiency, and reducing environmental footprints. Okay, so here nutrition, here health risks and environmental footprints, and here safeguarding food system contributions to environmental degradation, emission, etc. So they are graded as highly relevant, relevant, less relevant, and missing data in terms of the analysis. The analysis being national relevance of blue food in supporting the 4 policy objectives that we talked about. So you can see that there are places where blue foods can play a highly relevant role in reducing B12 deficiency here in Western Africa, Middle Northern Africa, in the Middle East, Eastern Africa, as well as Southwestern Africa. Over much of India it's relevant. And in terms of reducing omega-3 deficiency, again large places in Central and South America, Africa, even European countries, Middle East, India, and some Asian countries appear. Less relevant for most of the other countries, but still these can help the countries where reducing B12 deficiency and omega-3 deficiencies are important. The co-benefits of relying on blue foods can be tremendous. In terms of reducing cardiovascular diseases, these are high meat consuming countries like the US, China, and some European countries, which have high relevance in terms of relying on blue foods, and there are many other countries which have either relevance or less relevant application of blue food systems for managing health risks. In terms of reducing environmental footprints, again high meat consumption corresponds to high emissions from animal-based meat products, food products. You can see that much of Russia, Canada, US, China, Australia, here Argentina, this is Peru and Chile and many other South American countries here, and also many African countries as well. In terms of safeguarding food system contributions, highly relevant for many of the Central South American countries, as well as African countries, and relevant for Greenland and many of the Asian countries here, as well as African countries. Okay, so you can look at the details in the paper, but obviously this is a very detailed analysis, but one has to be careful about what the trade-offs are in terms of actually accomplishing these goals. Okay, looking here at the overlap in relevance between different policy objectives that we looked at, the numbers in parentheses in the top row represent the total number of countries for which each policy is relevant. So here are the numbers of number of countries. Each cell shows the number of countries in parentheses for which both column and row heading policies are relevant as a proportion of countries for which the column heading policy is relevant. Okay, so column heading is vitamin B12 versus the rows as well. Details, but it's worth just glancing through them. Relevance in this figure indicates countries categorized as highly relevant or relevant for a given policy. So here looking at reducing blue food sensitive deficiencies in terms of vitamin B12 and omega-3, reducing cardiovascular diseases, reducing environmental footprints, and safeguarding food system contributions. Okay. So vitamin B12 and omega-3 intersect here for 89 countries, and have the number of countries for which both column and row heading policies are relevant here is 39. For vitamin B12 and omega-3 there are 39 countries, with 43 countries being in total in terms of number of countries for which each policy is relevant. okay, so on. You can see here you're just plotting these here and looking for some kind of a autocorrelation and overlapping of multiple policies and co-benefits. Okay, so these are the ranges where overlaps happen. Some are as high as 100%, some are very low. Okay, so it's a useful map to have. Now looking at example of hypothetical trade-offs associated with policies pursuing economic and or nutritional benefits of blue foods. You have policies pursuing benefits of blue food. Nutritional examples here include domestic supply prioritized, sustainable commodification aligned with local preferences and demand. And you have the economic axis down here. So as you go up here, nutritional policy pursuing is dominant, whereas here export revenue, for example, so economic value is dominant. Here you have both nutritional and sustainable commodification aligned together. In terms of trade-offs, you have some knowns, some unknowns, some positive and some negatives. So you have environmental, equity, economy, and nutrition, and various scales here shown in terms of the impacts. Okay, so again, this is a way to consider the role blue foods can play in various ways, following these four policy frameworks offered here, with various details on how they can be made to be more successful or more economically co-beneficial versus nutrition benefits and so on. Okay, I just wanted to include it because ocean covers so much of the surface, and there is always this big battle between whether fisheries are being sustained or not, fishing down the food web idea from Dan Pauly and so on, who is now fighting against all fisheries in open waters, which is, it's like Wild West. There is very hard to enforce international rules. Lots of cheating happens and lots of unfortunate loss of sharks and other valuable species, or even whale hunting continues, and so on and so forth. Keeping all those things in mind, blue foods can still serve as an important part of the portfolio of overall nutrition security and food security, and they can actually help reduce overall emissions from the food production systems as a whole, especially in terms of reducing consumption of land-based animal proteins, which are very expensive in terms of environmental footprints and also bad for health, and they are also high emission food products. Okay.